London's, and apparently it's working. Let's not curse it anymore. So we
Yeah,
can,
don't jinx it.
yeah, I'm not going to. Hopefully everything goes well. So pleasure to host you guys. First of all, I'm not seeing King. Hopefully he is coming, but I want to thank him for connecting us with you. Obviously, he brought the project to my and London's attention like 3 weeks ago now, if I remember correctly, and it's been doing really, really well. I'm happy with the development. Hopefully, you guys are happy with the development. Usually, how we start, like with these spaces, we kind of like generally talk about the market and what's going on. And just because of your niche, I would like to hear your take about like everything that is happening in the US at the moment, especially with Binance. Do you agree with CZ's reaction, how he's reacting from everything that is being pumped out? God knows what at this point in time. The government, the feds, the SEC, we are seeing on the other side of the world with kind of totally different take on development. It seems to be that a lot of governments are now attacking also US dollars, because I think like US economy and US government has taken a really bad turn in the past, let's say 3 years now. Not taking any political side, but it's just what it is. It's kind of factual. So if you can like speak about whoever wants to take it from ATOR's profile, about CZ's take, about Binance, their like public stance. What is your take on the market at the moment and kind of like political back and forward within the crypto space?
Well, regardless of any political stance, we believe anonymity and censorship resistance is the utmost importance going forward. And it's the one thing that we need to continue championing, and it needs to remain a human right going forward. Politics will change with the times, but we need to exercise our rights and be able to stand together to be able to withstand these changes. I don't really have much to comment on the market. I think that'll fluctuate with the times as well. So that's not something that we're really paying attention to. We're trying to make sure that we have the tools necessary to continue doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, pretty straightforward answer. I mean, the specific comment of what actually I think yesterday went outside, which is I think totally ridiculous. I think I made a post regarding this. I think somewhere from US, I think it was Fed, basically classified decentralized crypto as a national security, which I think personally is a joke. And you obviously overlap. I think the niche overlaps with a lot of connotations that it's being coming out from the markets, especially from the US. Do you think, like, if you don't mind answering this question, do you think like CZ is doing the right thing? Because at least from my personal opinion, at this point in time, like I think CZ should just pull the plug on Binance US. I think that would make a really good stance for crypto in a whole, whether you are like champion of centralized, of anonymity, of decentralized. What's your take on this?
As a team, we don't have a specific position on the actions taken by specific organizations, but I mean, I agree with you in general. I think it's inevitable that efforts by regulators and governments to encroach greater into crypto will only become more frequent. And I'm quite happy to see, at least in market sentiment and in some actions, people have started to divest from the movements of traditional markets and movements of crypto. And I hope that the attempts by regulation, whether good or bad in the short term, will have a positive long-term effect in sort of reminding people that crypto really is meant to be a system against the traditional system of finance, and hopefully people will start to value the decentralized aspect truly again.
Completely agree with that. Like, this would be a good segue, I think, to start actually what ATOR is. I'm sure a lot of people are obviously aware of ATOR because of the kind of social traction it got past 2 to 3 weeks, even before, but a lot more people are noticing it. So I think it would be a good segue, especially once you said anonymity, decentralized. What does it actually mean? Why does the project exist? Why did you like decide to go on the market with your product? I think it would be a good opportunity for the interjection for everybody that is now listening.
So seeing that anonymity is of utmost importance, and we don't see that you can be secure without remaining anonymous, because we're interacting with different parties all the time with our digital identity. Any website we visit, any software that we use, for the most part, will know your IP and device information. And they don't consider that private anymore. There's a lot of things that are encroaching on our rights as far as our digital presence. And we think that the curve to get into anonymity has just gotten larger and larger. And we'd like to decrease that curve and fill that gap, and give people the tools necessary to be able to obfuscate their identity as much as possible and keep their identity their own, because you should be in charge of your identity, not a third party, not any other entity, not a malicious party in between you and the website that might exist. So I think ATOR came into existence wanting to educate and reward incentives to the people that are already operating these systems. And one of these systems is Tor. Tor has been around since before blockchain technology has become popular. It's been around before Bitcoin. Bitcoin was actually, introduced to be able to transact trustlessly with someone without having to know who's on the other side. So we don't know why Tor kind of fell to the wayside and blockchain technology continued to grow. So we want to bring the blockchain technology ecosystem into Tor and give Tor the proper, infrastructure it needs to be able to support the people that we see coming into the ecosystem more and more now because of the problems that you've actually highlighted earlier.
To me,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, to me, Tor is something that people used back in the day, mainly for things like Silk Road and the dark web. I mean, these days, are people still using Tor? What do people use Tor for in this day and age?
They use it for, the average person will use it for getting on websites that are blocked by their ISP or blocked in their local region. I guess the closest thing that you can think of now that it's been of late is, let's say in Texas, you can't really access abortion sites. So you'd use Tor to be able to get to an abortion site or any kind of, sexual health sites that you can't access from, let's say, Texas. Or if you're in a country that's completely has an internet outage, Turkmenistan had for a little while, there are different parts of the world that just don't have access to data. And you are actually curated the data that you get by your local ISP. So to be able to kind of experience the full web, we don't really like to call Tor the dark web. To us, it's the full web, because then you're in charge of the data that you want to see. You can see everything. There is no, top layer of just mainstream internet that you're exposed to that Google feeds you. You're actually in charge of what you see and how you see it, and then you can make your own decisions, and your worldview actually changes as well.
Okay, yeah.
I think this is a good question to ask, because I think Tor is very new concept to a lot of people. Obviously, it's a niche within the niche for most of the people, I think, in the community, and it's good that we have experts on this, on the spaces. Can you go a bit more in depth?
Most of the time, sorry, just to touch on that.
No.
Most of
go ahead.
the time, people are reactive. So people don't use a tool until something happens.
Exactly.
And then it's usually too late. So we'd like to enable people to be a little more proactive with their identity, one of the most, valuable assets that a person can have, before anything happens to it, right? So there are activists, there are journalists, there are educators that use Tor that just don't have access to this information or don't want their local entities to know that they're doing, they're educating girls, let's say in Afghanistan, or whatever it may be. They don't want to be known, but they want to still empower people to be able to develop, and for movements to continue to grow. So there are both sides to this. There's just the average user that wants to be able to protect themselves from even hackers, or just posts that they might make on the internet that are okay today, but might not be okay 5 or 6 years from now. because we see legislation changing every day that put people in trouble, where you don't have access to your bank account, or you get fired from your job, or you completely lose everything that you had because of something that you might have posted 10 years ago that was okay then and is not okay now.
Very much agree. Do you find it like, is it a secure option? Is there any downsides from using Tor? I'm just trying to cover all of the spots in this current narrative that we
your
are having.
identity anonymity is a scale. So you can never be truly anonymous. That would be a complete lie to say yes, you can be truly anonymous. You can obfuscate your IP as much as possible. So what happens with Tor is you jump or hop through several relays, and each relay is encrypting your data and also putting another IP address on top of it. So it's kind of like an onion. That's why it's called the onion router. There are several layers on top of your layer, so that it's harder to tell who is actually doing the action.
Okay, got it.
To answer your specific question on, I think you asked, are there any downsides to using Tor? And currently, there definitely are, largely due to the strength of the network itself. And that's a big motivator for why we're doing what we're doing. Right now, Tor's, even currently, 2 million daily users. On average, there are only 6,000 relays live. So in practice, that means far lower bandwidths. It means you often can't load large images or videos. So the network itself, while in theory, if it was correctly supported and used by the mainstream, would probably be better than the current system in every way, Tor is currently wildly unsupported, and that's something we want to change. But we'll get onto that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, no problem. Like, we can start getting into like how do you build up on this concept, and where does ATOR comes in with all of this story about the anonymity, obviously building upon what Tor offers. How does your concept from your projects kind of get into the picture?
So we see it as a multi-front project where we need to be able to educate, reward recognition, and facilitate hardware for non-technical users. Currently, it's an altruistic movement, and we'd like to empower altruism and not take away from that. So we are thinking of recognition rewards for having a healthy relay with useful uptime. What that means is if you pass, let's say, useful uptime, if it's 80%, then everyone gets the same amount of rewards so that you don't highlight any one relay for attack. There was previous attempts made that failed because they highlighted relays for attack. The other side is it's really hard for someone that's non-technical to be able to run a relay if they don't know how to set one up. So we think that there are a lot of non-technical users, just like in our community, that are been great in reaching out, and their enthusiasm is awesome, that want to run relays that just don't know how to set one up. So we'd like to facilitate that hardware and be able to help the infrastructure of the Tor network, where it's not just 6,000 relays. We'd like to get to 12,000 and 20,000 if possible. And the way that we see this happening is by people educating each other, by having the tools necessary to do this, and by supporting the movement with recognition rewards that everyone can then use in turn to get more hardware to run extra relays, and then use the protocol on the hardware for services that might be added in the future.
Okay, pretty interesting. Can you go a bit more in depth about the hardware? I think, like, watching your profile, I think you made a post recently, like, how do people interact with the hardware? How do they even obtain it? I think this is pretty interesting for people to actually know.
So hardware development will be more of our focus, Q3. Currently, we're working on our protocol. Simultaneously, we're sourcing manufacturers. So we're prototyping, we're looking for the hardware that'll be able to run the actual relay, because all of that code is open source. And then we'll be adding our protocol into the software as well, so that when you do receive the hardware, you'll be able to, as a non-technical user, connect to the relay and go through a prompt system that'll allow you to connect to your local network, and then set up your hardware so that you can link it to your wallet and be able to accept recognition rewards.
That's very interesting. So the use of hardware, basically, at least to my knowledge, I'm not even close an expert on this, kind of mirrors what Helium are doing. So can you make some kind of comparisons? Because I'm assuming some of the people listening can draw a comparison with that, so they have a better understanding in actually figuring out what you mean with the narrative.
So with Helium, just like, I don't know if you remember Skycoin, which is a little older than Helium. They tried to do that before. And there was Iongo even before SkyMiners and Skycoin. What we see with those networks is they don't really anonymize you, and they try to silo users into their own network, where that's usually the largest problem, is getting people onto your network or getting users. So a lot of these networks have attempted to create a separate, I guess, internet, or a decentralized internet, quote unquote. But we have seen it fail because no one really uses that network anymore. That's why we look at Tor or tools that are already available that users use to be able to empower the tools that are there and educate other users why these tools are important.
That's very interesting. So to go back to the token, I guess, which most of the people who are interested in the project, unfortunately, first thing that people actually look and get the eyes on the project is actually price of the moment, which is kind of a downside in the bear market and obviously in the bull market, but it is what it is. It gets eyes on your project and to actually people to get interested in your fundamental ideas, what you are actually building. If you can go a bit, I'm sure you are having questions also in your communities, maybe people reaching out to you in DMs, and certainly people interested in the buying your token. What are the tokenomics of ATOR? I know you have a tax involved into the tokenomics. Liquidity may also be something of a question if you're not on centralized exchanges. So if you can just touch upon all of these things.
Sure, and maybe for that, I'll actually start at the beginning. We have this idea, we have the concept, and the reason why we chose to do the entire project via an ERC20 token is the ATOR rewards that will anyway be paid to these Tor relays will be a decentralized currency of sorts. So we thought, why not put the entire development lifecycle into an ERC20 token, and that's what has led us here. So it also means that we've made fully open and accessible the ability to actually have a stake in what we're doing. We didn't immediately start with VC firms, for example. We sort of fair launched on the Ethereum blockchain as a token. And really, that's how we've grown such an open and excellent community, because we've been open ourselves to allow people to have a stake. So to answer your question more specifically, we have developed a unique contract to allow us to fund our development while keeping trading active and buoyant. So from your perspective or the end user's perspective, if you wish to buy ATOR on Uniswap, an automated market maker, you experience no trading fees, none on buy and none on sell. However, the contract has a fixed supply of tokens which it sells in strict proportion to volume, exactly 4% of volume currently, on the chart to essentially fund our development. And so this inherently is a time-limited function of the contract. Once the contract runs out of tokens, it'll no longer be injecting tokens into the circulating supply, and it allows us to raise for our runway. And I'm happy to report that in the 6 weeks since launch, we are actually ahead of where we expected to be, and in a very, very good position for the next 3 to 4 quarters to build what we want to build. In terms of the tokenomics with regards to the rewards, it's important to note that unlike some other currencies where you can quote unquote mine with hardware, we have a fixed supply. So in the short term, and by short term I mean first 1 to 2 years, we have automatic vesting of tokens, which will unlock and then form the rewards needed for these Tor relays. However, in the future, we have plans to make the entire protocol sustainable, such that as we give out ATOR rewards to these relays, they come back in the form of tokens being required for governance, tokens crucially being used to purchase our hardware, and then tokens being used to pay for services built on top of the Tor network, known as ATOR hidden services. So I suppose the short answer on that is that we have a fixed supply, and it'll be a closed loop from the perspective of those rewards.
That's a very in-depth, I guess, overview of the tokenomics for sure. If somebody on the open floor section has any questions to ask, we're gonna get into the tokenomics maybe more in depth. I like that you use the expression of short term, 1 to 2 years. Most of the people say short term, like 2 months. So definitely a good thing for everybody to see that you're here for the long run. This is a good, I think, the opportunity for you to actually address the milestones,
and,
at least by now.
The ideal scenario, of course, is this protocol, and what we build should.
You cut off for just a second there, at least for me. I'm not sure what happened.
Sorry, it's. That ideally this protocol, what we build, will be open source and should last longer than even this.
I don't know, guys, if anybody on the panel is hearing the same thing. It's a problem, I guess, with your mic. I think on your side, at least for me. Yeah, I think it's a connection issue on your side. Like, whoever is handling from the ATOR profile can probably take it over. Guys?
Yep, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's just the
great.
other profile, I think, has some issues, so you can take it over, not to stop the spaces.
Sure.
I think we were at the point, obviously the tokenomics. If anybody has any questions on the open floor, for sure ask. I think it's a good idea now to address obviously the current milestones that you already achieved, and obviously what we can expect from the future, because I was pretty happy that somebody is saying short term and classifying as 2 years. Most of the people like short term, it's like a couple of months. So that's pretty decent classification and runway for anybody that is listening, that the project is here for a while. Hopefully, it depends on a lot of stuff, but that's really a good runway.
Hi, Nora. Can you hear me again?
Now I can.
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, who knows? Maybe the ISP is blocking us right there as well. So, just to very briefly give that final sentence from the previous question, we hope the protocol will truly be sustainable for the long term and even outlast us as a team, especially as everything we're building will be open source. So that was all for that previous question. And on the point of our milestones so far, so we've been around, I think just over 6 weeks actually, if not longer. And we've made great progress, I would say, both organizationally and on development. So organizationally, of course, we have launched this token. We have started to form really an amazing community and made connections across the space. And as part of that, we have used our unique contract to fund the runway needed for the next 2, 3, 4 quarters worth of steps. Organizationally, we've also set up our LLC, ATOR Labs, in Norway. And we had a chance also, and the team can speak more on this, we had a chance to go to ETH Denver and actually demonstrate some of our prototypes for the ATOR relay and the ATOR router, as well as speak to Roger, the founder of Tor. So organizationally, we've had those developments. Developmentally, we've had the chance to onboard some superb engineers who are building the registration protocol as we speak. And we've also released our technical paper, the ATOR technical white paper, which actually sets in stone some of the technical decisions we're going to make to actually implement this protocol. And as part of that, we've made a few crucial decisions already as to how this registration process will work, the key signing, key pairings to use, and a few more of those technical specifics. So it means we have quite a specific vision now for how we're going to go out and achieve the initial roadmap we set, and we're in a very, very good position to do so.
Very nice. So far, a lot of milestones have been achieved, which is quite impressive because you are still a new project, comparing to the rest of the market. So what would the next, I guess, I don't know how comfortable you are in saying a roadmap of at least 2023, what would be the next year for current holders and obviously people who are eyeing ATOR as an investment supposed to look like? I guess it's always changing, as the market is changing, the planning is always changing, but kind of the general structure of the project, if you can share that, I think that would be a good idea.
Oh, of course. And we're always very happy to share our roadmap. So we have just entered quarter 2 of 2023. And actually, before I go into that, broadly, the steps for how we're going to achieve our vision is as follows. So our first focus is the protocol, specifically the protocol alongside the concept of proof of uptime, which are those ATOR rewards that were mentioned earlier. Actually having that protocol built up and running for existing Tor relays to register with us and in a sense become not only Tor relays but also crypto miners and earn ATOR. So our initial focus organizationally is the protocol, and from there we transition to greater focus on the hardware, the ATOR router and ATOR relay, and then finally look into those making the protocol sustainable through services built on top of Tor and ATOR. So that's a high level sort of vision of the next 1 to 2 years of what we want to achieve here. More specifically, in the next quarter, the first part of our protocol, which is the protocol to actually register an ETH wallet with a Tor relay. Bear in mind, these things have completely different signing mechanisms and we're bringing them together. That will release this quarter, as well as the first private beta for the actual proof of uptime mechanism. So we will just start to see on beta these Tor relays actually being rewarded in real time, the ATOR currency. In addition to that, we also hope to introduce more governance mechanisms in this quarter to actually decentralize some of the decision-making process around those rewards. So that's over the next 2-3 months. And then in quarter 3, we will actually release live to the entire internet proof of uptime for Tor, which will officially turn any registered Tor relays into quote-unquote crypto miners to actually incentivize them to provide the services they're already providing. And at that point, we really hope to start seeing an impact on the net strength of the Tor network. As we tip into the end of quarter 3 into quarter 4, the focus shifts onto hardware. So we begin the manufacture and distribution of the ATOR router, which I don't think we've mentioned before. It's just it's a smaller device that end users can use to actually connect their consumer devices to the Tor network, sort of like a hotspot. And then crucially, we'll introduce the manufacture and distribution at the end of quarter 4, at the start of quarter 1 next year, of the ATOR relay. So that will allow non-technical users to just buy our device, connect it to their internet and power, and then contribute to the Tor network and be recognized for doing so. And in quarter 1 of next year, we will begin the introduction of these ATOR hidden services, which we can speak more about maybe on a separate question, which again accelerates the movement of ATOR back into the protocol as they pay for services built on top of Tor. So broadly, that's a vision over the next year.
That's a very extensive vision, and you have a lot of work to do, and I'm sure your community and hopefully the new people coming into the community will be very excited about the development. Certainly you have a lot of eyes on you, and I'm going to use this opportunity. Obviously, as per your own accord, we always ask on Spaces if you are kind enough to share any alpha information. I'm sure people are always asking the same question, like centralized exchanges, marketing, what is your community building, I guess, vision. And obviously if you have some of the alpha to drop maybe that you haven't released from your current social updates, that's always appreciated on the Spaces. I think both from us and from the community, I think they will be very excited to hear anything, obviously if you are willing to do so.
Oh, Noor, how I would love to share some of the things we're doing in the background, especially with regards to the first half of the things you mentioned, centralized exchanges, reaching out to bigger players on things like liquidity, our automated market maker. I'm just going to say that for now. I'm afraid I can't say any more on that, but I am very happy to share that technically, on the very first point of the roadmap I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, we have actually made a breakthrough on that registration protocol, and we're happy to announce that unlike maybe as stated in our technical white paper and initial roadmap, the process for registering a Tor relay with an ETH wallet can now be entirely decentralized. And this may not make sense immediately, and I think it should do in the context of what we build in the coming months, but I really think this changes the game in terms of the accessibility of that first protocol that we're going to build. And we'll have you kind of you hurried me there, I guess, hurried the team a little bit, but we'll have a thorough write-up on that in the coming days, explaining this breakthrough. And so what that means is in the coming days and weeks, we will see a live working version of this protocol to register an ETH wallet with the Tor relay, and it'll be the first system like that to exist. So it'll be a huge step forward for this protocol on our roadmap, and we've made that breakthrough. And more generally, I'm not sure quite how self-contained this alpha is, but we're happy to report that we have put increased focus on the hardware. I know it's mentioned for more towards the end of the year, but we have done some onboarding and a bit of research into actually bringing some of that a little earlier in the year. So hopefully sooner than expected, the ATOR community will have the pleasure of seeing some of what we're doing on the hardware side as well. So I can only say, stay put. We'll all have some very exciting news for the entire community very soon.
Thank you very much for sharing. I am aware that you can't overshare, and for sure follow ATOR and the socials to keep updated with the project. I would just ask one question maybe before we go to the open floor, because I'm interested in some of these stuff. Why Norway specifically? I mean, I'm hoping there is some specific reason that you can share. Maybe some of the people inside of the community want to open the same thing. Did you find it maybe easier because of some kind of regulation? Why specifically Norway? I found that quite interesting, which is like in Europe, I always try to, because I'm from Europe, I'm docs, everybody knows where I am. So it's quite an interesting business move. Why did you pick it over US or maybe some other place? Is there a specific reason, or just they were most lenient with you?
That's a good question, actually, and that's one we haven't got. And while the entire world, at least with regards to government and regulation, increasingly encroaches upon our rights, we found that the Scandinavian nations in particular have stood out for doing less of that. I mean, quite frankly, that's all we can say. And so generally, there is less regulation in these Scandinavian countries, particularly with regard to what we're building here. And we happen to have also some very close connections in Norway specifically. So in general, it's better for anonymity and should be the best base for what we hope to achieve in the long term.
I assume that was the answer, because I'm also looking at a couple of countries like, I mean, I'm not sure if it fits like Scandinavia, but Estonia, Norway, Sweden, they're always most lenient. And I think it stands the test how they are doing past 10 years, at least to my knowledge. They are very tech oriented and they are usually pioneers in a lot of stuff. So that's always nice to hear that they are open in the innovation field. As US is kind of taking a backtrack.
That relay operators will be able to cash out their ATOR without the sexes being involved. Yeah, that was all.
Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you very much for your support, and thank you for being a user. Are you also a relay operator? I don't know if you want to disclose that. Oh, did they hop off the stage?
No. We are cutting them off because there are some bugs, I think, when there's like too many people. So after they ask a question, I do apologize for that.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to know if they were a relay operator too. I wanted to say that they can get ATOR for running a relay awesome themselves already.
If you request to speak again, I'll bring you up.
No, it's fine. I mean, they can comment. It's okay. I don't want to go against what you guys do with the space. It's perfectly fine. And yes, we're definitely looking for decentralized ways and I guess hidden swaps or anonymous swaps to be able to get ATOR or cash it out without having to KYC, if that answers your question.
I think it does. And there's like some of the exchanges without disclosing many. I mean, we know a couple of them obviously in the space that don't require KYC, at least at the moment. These things can change with the regulation. So for sure, at least for the time being, I think like everybody is asking for some centralized exchange for whatever reason. I'm also trying to champion, like I'm a big fan of DEX aggregators. One of them is Unison. So I'm always championing decentralized trading, the DEXs, DEX aggregators. I think that's the future. And that's something that I think CZ just tweeted a couple of days ago. So definitely a good idea. And I do apologize to the Anon guy. I'm sure if you DM ATOR, they are going to be more than happy to respond to any further questions or maybe business opportunities that you have. London, I think you can move on to the second question. The third question, sorry.
Let's bring Modok up. Yeah, Modok, you're good to go.
Can you just unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So my question is, what is your plan in the near future? Do you have any strategy to attack a new investor to your platform and keep them long time?
I mean, I thank you for the question. Maybe you joined late. ATOR, if you want to summarize briefly in a couple of sentences, I guess you touched upon it, but if somebody joined late, you can take another opportunity to maybe summarize what the person asked just now.
Sure. So broadly, our steps is first releasing the registration process to link an ETH wallet to a Tor relay, and then the actual ATOR protocol to reward people, specifically Tor relays, for actually contributing to the network. And then from there, we will look into releasing our hardware. So broadly, that's our sort of roadmap. And to answer your question on onboarding investors, well, really, we stand far more for our vision than purely having people invested. People can choose to invest, choose to trade this if they want to as a security, but ultimately, we're here to build our protocol and continually deliver to really build a community of believers, not necessarily believers in the ATOR token, but in the protocol and our vision for mass adoption of internet anonymity. So that's the community we really care about, and those are the people we really care about onboarding.
Thank you very much for the answer, and I guess repeating yourself once again. London, I think 2 more questions, then we are going to start to wrap up with the, conclusion.
I'm bringing up Ryan now. Yep, Brian, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Okay.
Have you got a question, bro?
Yeah. What is the difference between your token and other token in the market? How can I ensure the safety of your transaction? On which network I can currently buy your token?
Okay, I guess that's a pretty generic question. I mean, maybe they are asking, I guess I would revise the question maybe in an audit of the contract. I guess that's maybe the topic that we haven't touched upon. If you can maybe clarify that. I guess that's what it means by asking this question.
Sure. Yes, I like that summary as well. So, of course, our contract has been internally audited by our own engineers. However, we are also in the final stages of receiving an audit from Solid Group, which we'll push onto our GitHub soon.
Awesome. Let's bring one more up. Stefan. Yep, Stefan, good to go, man.
Hi. So my question is what is the relation between you guys and the founders of Tor browser, or you are the founders? I don't get that. So, yeah.
I guess that question was to the project, correct?
Yeah.
Not us. Oh, okay. You can take that.
We're not a subsidiary of Tor. We're not endorsed by Tor. Any of the opinions that are expressed by the Tor team are not associated with us. We are here to support the open source network. We're here to support their altruistic movement and the software that they've made available to the people for decades now. I hope that answers the question.
I think that's a very good answer. I mean, it goes in line with, I guess, the idea of the blockchain and the centralization and the future of the building on top of the same networks, which I won't really entertain. I'm not the developer, but I highly stand behind spreading the word of everybody in the space who is trying to, I guess, change how we view the world today. And I think this is the good opportunity to maybe address the how you see the space going in the future. How would you like it to be, for example, and how you think realistically it would look like, at least in the next maybe 2-3 years. Because I think it has a good amount of connections with your roadmap and what you are planning as a project. It's always tough to manage a project with the uncertainties going into the market. And obviously the whole, again, I wouldn't go back to the politics, but it certainly affects the market. So we can wrap up as a conclusion. I won't take any more questions. I think we covered most of the stuff. If you can touch upon a bit around that, anybody from your side.
Sure. And to us, it's not revolution, it's evolution. So it's evolving what we have already into something better, into something that more people can find valuable. And going forward, I think it really depends on how people view themselves and what they can and cannot do in a certain situation. So I think that if going forward people are more aware of their rights, more aware of the importance of anonymity and security, then we will see more tools that are anonymous, that are secure. If the users and consumers start asking of companies that they secure their data, they encrypt it, or that they don't keep their data at all, that will happen, but it depends on the consumer. If we as users and consumers all unite and make sure that we are secure and that our data is not going to be breached or leaked, or that they're not keeping extra data that they don't need, they being a company, a website, any application that you use, any interaction that you have with the digital space, I think that it will be a freer and more safe environment. If people kind of throw their hands up and say, hey, what can we do about it? Everything is tracked already anyway, everyone knows everything, doesn't really matter, then we won't see this championed movement, and I do not know what kind of future that would bring, but we don't want to know what kind of future that would bring because it doesn't look good.
Yeah, definitely. That's we are certainly on the verge of dystopian culture. So we need to look on the bright side, and obviously the privacy and anonymity is a hot topic, I think, in the space at the moment. I want to thank you both for taking the time and coming and actually answering all of the questions. Specifically because of your niche, you are quite transparent, which is something I really like in crypto. Very open on the social media, very open with answering a lot of your community, and obviously your willingness to even jump on the space. Most of projects from your niche kind of stay in the background, and you're very much on the front line and standing behind your idea, and I find this very commendable. I'm actually quite mad that King wasn't here. I really wanted to bring him up to speak and hear he's very passionate about the project. I know this from even DMs and talking to him. Probably he is benching or squatting somewhere at the moment. So I don't want to disturb him at that time, but certainly he's one of the your biggest supporters, and I know you're talking to him in private, and I think he's doing a really good job spreading the word. Guys, thank you very much for coming. Hoping there's another opportunity, certainly when there's an update or you want to come on again to speak, there's always a spot for you. And thank you again. If there's anything else for closure, I would leave the floor for you. Just to remind again, before I leave the closing floor for you, the giveaway is going to be distributed from either Cryptopium or London's channel. Just watch for that. The snapshot is already taken, so stay close with the announcement and you will be contacted in the end. ATOR guys, the floor is yours. You can have the closing.